What happens when one of Hollywood's most adored actors sits down for what should be a routine promotional interview, only to find himself under fire from the toughest questioning of his career? What ensues is a television moment, so intense it results in security being called and the guest forcibly escorted out. This is the explosive story of Johnny Depp's disastrous appearance on The View, and how Joy Behar turned what should have been a friendly conversation into a career-shattering confrontation, sparking heated debates and a social media frenzy. Before we get into the heart of the drama, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments who you think was in the right during this whole ordeal. Now, let's take a closer look at what truly went down behind the scenes. Johnny Depp walked onto the View set that morning, expecting the usual promotional routine. He had a new film to discuss, a bit of casual chat about his latest projects, and maybe a few laughs with the panel. The studio audience greeted him with warm applause as he took his seat, flashing that trademark smile that had won over audiences for decades. "Welcome back to The View, Johnny," Whoopi Goldberg said, smiling as always. "It's always a pleasure to have you here." "Thanks for having me, Whoopi." "Always a pleasure," Depp replied, adjusting his rings and looking relaxed. But Joy Behar had something else in mind. From the moment the cameras began rolling, Joy's demeanor shifted. She leaned forward, her papers in hand, her expression set in a way that signaled this wasn't going to be the casual conversation everyone had expected. "So, Johnny," Joy began, interrupting before anyone else could speak, "let's talk about your recent legal troubles and how they've impacted your ability to get work in Hollywood." The studio went silent. This wasn't the typical, light question guests received. Depp's smile faltered for a moment, but he held his composure. "Well, Joy, I'm actually here to talk about my new film," Depp said, trying to steer the conversation back. "It's an exciting project that I think people will really enjoy." But Joy wasn't backing down. "Surely you can understand why people might be hesitant to support your work, given everything that's happened," she pressed, ignoring his attempt to redirect. Depp maintained his calm, but it was clear the pressure was building. "Well, I think people should focus on the art, not the artist's personal life," Depp responded, carefully choosing his words. "I've always tried to bring characters to life that entertain, and that's what I'm here to talk about." Joy fired back immediately. "But you can't separate the two, can you? When you're asking people to pay money to see you, you're asking them to support you personally. And given your track record with relationships, don't you think that's a problem?" The audience began murmuring, and the tension in the room was palpable. What had started as a standard daytime talk show was now spiraling into something far more confrontational. Depp's jaw tightened, his voice gaining a subtle edge. "My track record," Depp repeated, a slight bite to his tone. "Joy, I came here to discuss my work, not to be put on trial for my personal life." "Well, maybe that's the problem," Joy countered, her tone laced with smugness. "Maybe you think you can just show up and charm your way out of taking responsibility for your actions." Sunny Hostin tried to intervene, sensing the situation escalating. "Johnny, tell us about working with your co-stars on this new project. What was that experience like?" But Joy wasn't having it. "We'll get to that," she said dismissively. "But first, I want Johnny to explain to our audience why they should trust him again." Depp's composure was beginning to crack, his calm demeanor slipping as the interview grew more heated. "Trust me, Joy?" Depp asked, his voice steady but now tinged with frustration. "I'm an actor. I make movies. People can choose to watch them or not. I'm not running for president here. And yet, you're asking for people's money and emotional investment," Joy shot back. "Don't you think a lot of our viewers are wondering if you deserve it?" The tension was now so thick, it was almost suffocating. The camera operators moved in, tightening their shots, sensing that something big was unfolding. The other hosts shifted uncomfortably, but Joy appeared to thrive off the conflict. "You know what, Joy?" Depp said, his voice calm but with an unmistakable firmness. "I think you've already made up your mind about me before I even walked in here. This isn't an interview. It's an ambush." "It's accountability," Joy replied, her voice cutting through the air. "Something you seem to have trouble with." That was the moment everything changed. Depp's famous temper, which he'd carefully kept under control in public, started to show its cracks. "Accountability," Depp repeated, his voice dropping to a dangerously quiet level. Asterisk from someone who makes a living tearing others down on television. "That's rich, Joy," Depp shot back, his voice laced with sarcasm. The studio audience gasped in shock. This wasn't the laid-back, easygoing Johnny Depp they were used to seeing in interviews. His words hung in the air, the mood shifting instantly. Joy's eyes sparkled with triumph. She had finally gotten a reaction, and she wasn't about to let it go. "Oh, so now you're going to attack me personally," she said, feigning innocence. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly what I'm talking about." The minute someone asks Johnny Depp a tough question, he gets defensive and starts lashing out. "I'm not lashing out," Depp said, his hands gripping the arms of his chair. "I'm pointing out the hypocrisy of someone who profits from controversy lecturing me about accountability." Whoopi, sensing the escalating tension, tried to regain control. "Okay, let's all take a breath here," she said, but was immediately cut off. "No, Whoopi," Joy interrupted, waving her hand dismissively. "I want to hear what Johnny has to say." "Go ahead, Johnny. Tell us how you really feel about critics." Depp leaned forward, his trademark calm now replaced by palpable frustration. "You want to know how I feel?" he asked, his voice no longer relaxed. "I feel like I walked into a courtroom instead of a talk show. I feel like you decided to prosecute me the moment I sat down. And now you're not interested in anything I actually have to say. Maybe because what you have to say isn't worth hearing," Joy retorted, her cruel smile playing across her face. "Maybe people are tired of your sob stories and your victim complex." The other hosts sat in stunned silence. Sarah Haynes stared down at her hands while Sunny Hostin kept glancing toward the producers, silently pleading for an intervention. But the cameras kept rolling and Joy kept pushing. "Victim complex." Depp's voice rose in anger. "You sit here every day judging people you've never met, making assumptions about situations you know nothing about. And you want to talk to me about victim complexes?" "I know what I've read," Joy shot back, unwavering. "I know what the courts have said. I know what multiple people have testified to under oath. Do you?" Depp stood up abruptly, his chair rolling back behind him. "Or do you know what gets ratings? 'Cause that seems to be all you care about." The room fell silent, save for the faint hum of the cameras. Joy remained seated, but her posture had changed. For the first time since the interview began, she looked slightly unsure of how far she had pushed things. "Sit down, Johnny," she said, trying to regain her authority. "You're being ridiculous. I'm being ridiculous." Depp laughed bitterly. "I came here to talk about a film that employed hundreds of people and might bring some joy to audiences. And instead, you want to relitigate my entire personal life on national television, and I'm the one being ridiculous." "You're a public figure," Joy insisted. "Your personal life is public business when it affects what?" Depp interrupted. "When it affects your ability to feel morally superior. When it affects your ratings. Because that's what this is really about, isn't it, Joy?" Joy's face flushed a deep red. Whether from anger or embarrassment, it was unclear. "How dare you question my motives?" she snapped. "I'm trying to give our viewers the truth about who you really are." "The truth." Depp's voice was now dripping with incredulity. You wouldn't know the truth if it walked up and introduced itself. You deal in gossip and speculation and call it journalism. I deal in facts, Joy shot back. Something you seem allergic to. Facts. Depp moved closer to the table. Here's a fact for you, Joy. You've spent the last 10 minutes trying to destroy me on television. Not because you care about justice or truth, but because you enjoy it. You get off on tearing people down. The tension in the room was so thick it could be cut with a knife. The camera operators seemed nervous, and producers on the sidelines gestured frantically. But Joy was determined to continue the confrontation. I get off on holding people accountable, Joy retorted. Something that clearly makes you very uncomfortable. What makes me uncomfortable, Depp said, his voice shaking with barely contained fury, is watching someone abuse their platform to bully people for entertainment. You're not a journalist, Joy. You're a professional provocateur, and you're a has-been actor who can't handle criticism. Joy fired back immediately, but it was clear the breaking point had been reached. The tension in the air was palpable, and the confrontation had officially spiraled into chaos. Depp's hands clenched into fists, and for a moment, the entire studio held its breath, wondering if things were about to escalate into something physical. Finally, Depp's voice broke the silence, deadly quiet, yet heavy with tension. You know what? He said, his words measured, but sharp. You're right about one thing, Joy. I can't handle this kind of criticism. I can't handle sitting here and being lectured by someone who wouldn't last 5 minutes dealing with the kind of scrutiny you're so eager to dish out. Then maybe you shouldn't be in the public eye. Joy replied coldly, her voice steady, as if she were delivering the final word. And maybe you shouldn't be on television, Depp shot back, his tone cutting through the air. But here we are. Whoopi, desperately trying to regain control of the situation, spoke up. Okay, we really need to know, Joy interrupted, her voice rising with impatience. I want to know what Johnny thinks, gives him the right to come on our show and insult me and our audience. Your audience. Depp looked around the studio at the stunned faces, his gaze steady. I think your audience deserves better than watching you tear people apart for sport. I think they deserve actual conversation instead of whatever this is. Joy stood up now, facing Depp across the panel table, her stance challenging. This is reality, Johnny, she said, her voice dripping with disdain. This is what happens. When people ask you real questions, instead of lobbing you softballs about your latest vanity project, real questions. Depp's composure was rapidly shattering. You haven't asked me a single real question since I sat down. You've just been attacking me personally and calling it journalism. The confrontation had reached a boiling point. Both Depp and Joy were now standing, facing off, while the other host sat frozen, unsure whether to intervene or simply let the chaos unfold. You want journalism. Joy's voice oozed venom. Here's some journalism for you, Johnny. Your career is over. Nobody wants to work with you. Nobody wants to watch your movies. And sitting here throwing a tantrum isn't going to change that. The words hit like a punch. Even Joy seemed to realize she'd crossed a line, but there was no turning back now. The studio was silent, the audience wide-eyed in disbelief. Depp stared at her for a long moment, his chest rising and falling as he tried to regain control of his emotions. When he spoke, his voice was eerily calm. You know what, Joy? You're absolutely right. My career might be over. Maybe nobody wants to work with me anymore, but at least I had a career to lose. At least I created something. All you do is sit here every day and tear down people who actually tried to build something. I built this show, Joy snapped back, her words full of fury. I built my reputation by telling the truth. You built your reputation by being cruel. Depp fired back instantly. Joy's face went pale, the color draining from her cheeks. How dare you call me a coward? she spat, her voice shaking with anger. "I didn't call you a coward," Depp said, stepping closer to the panel. "I said you hide behind a panel and attack people who can't fight back on equal terms. That's not truth-telling. Joy, that's cowardice." Joy's expression faltered for just a moment, a flicker of uncertainty passing through her. But the mask quickly snapped back into place. "I asked the questions." "Nobody else will ask," Joy insisted, her voice now faltering slightly. "No." Depp responded calmly, but with undeniable conviction. "You ask questions designed to humiliate people? There's a difference between holding someone accountable and publicly destroying them for entertainment. Well, if you feel destroyed, maybe that says something about your conscience." Joy shot back, but the words lacked their usual sting. "My conscience is fine," Depp said quietly. "But yours should be bothering you because what you're doing right now in front of all these people says everything about who you really are." The other hosts had long given up trying to intervene. They sat in stunned silence as Depp and Joy continued their verbal battle, both breathing heavily. Clearly past the point of no return. "Who I really am?" Joy's voice cracked, a hint of doubt creeping into her tone. "I'm someone who isn't afraid to ask tough questions. I'm someone who holds powerful people accountable." "You're someone who bullies people on television," Depp replied flatly. "And you profit from cruelty and call it courage," Depp added. "And the saddest part is, I don't think you even realize what you've become." For a brief moment, Joy's expression flickered with uncertainty, but it was quickly replaced by a hardened mask of anger. "Get off my stage," she ordered, her voice tight with rage. "Gladly," Depp replied, turning toward the exit. But Joy wasn't done yet. "And don't come back. We don't need washed-up actors coming on here and lecturing us about morality." Depp stopped in his tracks, his back still to her. Slowly, he turned around and the look in his eyes was chilling. Several audience members gasped at the intensity in his gaze. "Washed up," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You want to know what washed up looks like, Joy? It's spending your golden years attacking people half your age because you never had the talent to create anything yourself. It's turning into exactly the kind of bitter, vindictive person that audiences tune in to watch because they feel sorry for you." "Security," Joy shouted, her composure finally shattering completely. "Get him out of here." Depp raised a hand as two security guards approached from the wings. "Don't worry," he said, his voice steady again. "I'm leaving. But before I do, I want everyone in this audience to remember something. Is what happens when you give cruel people power. This is what happens when you reward bullying with applause and ratings." He turned and looked directly into the main camera. "And this is what happens when someone finally stands up to it." Joy, trembling with rage, muttered, "You're pathetic." "A pathetic has-been who can't handle being called out," Depp said, smiling bitterly. "You know what's really pathetic, Joy?" Depp said, his voice cutting. "Spending your life tearing down people's dreams and calling it a career. Spending your time destroying instead of creating. That's pathetic." The security guards flanked Depp as he walked calmly toward the exit. Just before he reached the edge of the stage, he turned back one final time. "By the way," he said, "conversationally, my new film opens next weekend for anyone interested in supporting actual art instead of whatever this is." With that, Johnny Depp walked off the view stage, leaving behind a stunned studio audience, a panel of speechless hosts, and one very rattled Joy Behar, who was still standing behind the panel table, trembling with a mix of rage and what might have been shame. The cameras kept rolling for another 30 seconds, capturing Joy's attempts to regain her composure while the other hosts sat in complete silence. Finally, Whoopi called for a commercial break, and the most explosive television moment of the year came to a sudden end. The confrontation lasted less than 15 minutes, but it revealed something about both participants that audiences had never seen before. Johnny Depp, stripped of his usual charm and diplomacy, fighting back against what he saw as systematic bullying, and Joy Behar, her aggressive interviewing style taken to its logical extreme, exposed as someone more interested in destruction than discovery. What did you think of this incredible confrontation? Was Johnny Depp right to fight back against Joy's aggressive questioning, or did he cross the line with his personal attacks? Let me know in the comments below what side you're on.